A 3-year-old baby elephant stood in the dust of a Texas road, trembling but refusing to move. Behind her lay Grace, her mother, motionless after a terrible hit-and-run with a truck. Rescuers were desperate to help, but Lily would not let anyone come close. She did not understand medicine. She did not understand death. She only knew one thing. If she left her mama's side, she might lose her forever. And when everyone thought it was almost too late, one piece of camera footage revealed the truth that left them all in tears. Morning came gently over the Texas hill country, spreading gold across the dry grass, cedar trees, and low stone ridges of the wildlife preserve. Before the rangers made their rounds, before the first truck moved along the back road, a tiny elephant calf named Lily was already awake, tucked close beside her mother's warm gray side. Lily was 3 years old, small for her age, with oversized ears that lifted at every sound, and a curious trunk that never stopped searching the world. She followed her mother, Grace, everywhere. If Grace stepped toward the pond, Lily stepped with her. If Grace paused beneath the oaks, Lily stopped too, as if her whole life depended on matching her mother's shadow. To the keepers, Lily was playful, stubborn, and bright-eyed. To Grace, she was something more fragile than morning light. The older elephant always placed her body between Lily and anything unfamiliar. A rattling gate, a strange vehicle, a coyote call from the hills. Grace never panicked, but she never forgot danger either. Lily did not understand the word protection. She only understood the feeling of it. Protection was the brush of Grace's trunk across her forehead. It was the deep rumble that vibrated through her little chest when her mother called her close. It was the way the world seemed less frightening when Grace was standing beside her. The preserve had once been quiet land, wide enough for rescued animals to move without fear. But beyond the south fence, things had begun to change. New construction lights glowed at night. Men in hard hats came and went. Sometimes, before sunrise, heavy trucks passed the service road where no truck was supposed to be. Lily noticed those sounds before she understood them. The low growl of engines made her ears stiffen. The smell of diesel drifted through the grass and settled in her trunk like something bitter. Whenever the noise came, Grace would stop walking, raise her head, and listen with a stillness that made Lily press herself closer. One morning, Ranger Jake Turner stood near the fence line, watching tire marks cut deep into the dirt. He had a notebook in one hand and concern written across his face. Lily watched him from behind Grace's front leg, blinking at the man who always spoke softly, but smelled of leather, dust, and worry. Jake did not come too close. He knew Grace trusted him only because he respected her space. He lowered his voice when he spoke to Emily Carter, the young veterinarian beside him. Emily looked toward Lily with gentle eyes, but her expression changed when she saw how Grace kept turning toward the road, as if waiting for something bad to appear. That afternoon, Lily found a blue ribbon tangled in the brush near the old crossing path. It fluttered in the wind, bright and strange, tied to a stake beside the dirt road. She reached for it with her trunk, but Grace moved faster than Lily had ever seen her move, stepping in front of the calf and pushing her back with sudden force. Lily stumbled, startled more than hurt. For one breath, she did not recognize her mother. Grace's ears were spread wide, her trunk lifted high, her whole body tense like a living wall. Then the faraway rumble came again, faint but growing, rolling across the hills before fading behind the cedar line. The sound passed, but Grace did not relax. Lily stood beneath her mother's chin, looking up at the great face she trusted more than anything. She reached her little trunk toward Grace's mouth, asking without words why the morning had changed, why the air felt tight, why her mother's heart seemed to beat so hard. Grace answered the only way she could. She lowered her trunk and wrapped it gently around Lily's back, drawing the calf against her chest. The touch was calm, but not carefree. It felt like a promise being made in silence. One Lily could not fully understand yet, but would remember when everything else fell apart. As the sun dipped behind, the hills, the preserve, settled into a soft orange hush. Lily walked beside Grace toward the sleeping grove, still glancing back at the road. Somewhere beyond the fence, another engine groaned in the distance. Grace stopped, placed Lily behind her once more, and stared into the darkening path ahead. By morning, the fear had not left Grace's body. Lily could feel it before she saw it, the way her mother stood too still beside the sleeping grove, listening while the sun climbed over the hills. The little elephant lifted her trunk into the cool air, copying Grace, searching for the invisible thing that had made the world feel unsafe. The preserve woke slowly around them. Quail moved through the brush, horses stirred behind a distant fence, and the pond caught the first pale light. Lily usually ran toward the water at that hour, splashing before Grace could stop her. But that morning, she walked carefully, staying close enough that her shoulder brushed her mother's leg. Far beyond the south fence, the dirt service road curved through a low patch of cedar and mesquite. It had once been used only by rangers and feed trucks, a quiet road that animals learned to ignore. Lately, it carried a different sound, heavier and harsher, a sound that made dust rise before the vehicle could even be seen. Ranger Jake Turner reached that road before breakfast. He knelt beside a line of fresh tire marks pressed deep into the mud, wider than any preserve vehicle should have made. Broken bark and splinters of pine lay scattered near the gate, and one metal chain hung loose, scraped raw, where someone had forced it open in the dark. Emily Carter arrived minutes later in her white field truck, her hair pulled back, her medical bag still on the passenger seat. She listened as Jake explained what he had found. Her eyes moved from the damaged gate to the crossing path Grace used with Lily, and for a moment, the young veterinarian said nothing at all. From the shade of the oaks, Lily watched them. She did not understand notebooks, tire tracks, or whispered reports. She only understood faces. Jake's face looked tight. Emily's looked sad in a quiet way. And when Grace saw both of them standing near the road, she shifted her body until Lily was hidden behind her again. Later that morning, Sheriff Cole Harris drove into the preserve with 2 deputies and a cloud of dust behind his cruiser. He was not cruel, but he looked at problems like they were fences to be repaired, not lives to be understood. He stared at the broken gate, then at Grace and Lily across the field, and his mouth hardened. Cole told Jake the trucks were a county matter, not a wildlife emergency. Then he added that the elephants were wandering too close to the road and creating risk for drivers. Emily turned sharply at that. Grace had walked that route long before the construction crews arrived. The road was the new thing. The danger had been brought to her. Lily flapped her ears when Cole's voice rose. The sound was not loud enough to scare most people, but it made her chest tighten. She pressed her trunk against Grace's leg, and Grace answered with a low rumble that traveled through the ground. It was not panic. It was a warning, deep and old, meant only for her calf. That afternoon, Jake followed the tire tracks beyond the fence and found another sign. A strip of orange cloth tied to a cedar branch, marking a shortcut through the preserve. Someone had been guiding trucks across the land at night. Not just once, not by mistake. The road that should not have been there had become a secret passage. Emily stood beside him, watching the trail disappear toward the old water crossing. "Grace uses that path," she said softly. Jake nodded, but his eyes were on the distant hill where Lily had begun chasing a butterfly around her mother's feet. The calf looked weightless in the sunlight, unaware that men were arguing over the safety of her world. Near sunset, a young girl named Maddie sat on the back steps of the ranger station, waiting for her father, one of the rescue workers. She saw Lily across the field and smiled as the little elephant tried to lift a fallen branch twice her size. For a brief minute, the preserve felt gentle again, almost normal. Then the wind shifted. Diesel drifted over the grass, faint but sharp. Grace raised her head. Lily stopped with the branch still curled in her trunk. Somewhere beyond the cedars, an engine groaned and faded before anyone could see it. The adults turned toward the road, but Lily looked only at her mother. That night, Jake locked the south gate with a new chain and placed warning signs along the crossing. Emily stayed late to check Grace from a distance, unable to shake the feeling that time was narrowing around them. In the dark field, Lily slept tucked against Grace's front legs, while her mother remained awake, facing the road. The next morning came wrapped in fog. It rolled low across the Texas hills, softening the fences, the cedar trees, and the pale dirt road until everything looked farther away than it really was. Lily woke with her trunk tucked against Grace's leg, blinking at the white world around her, waiting for her mother to move first. Grace did not rise quickly. She stood for a long moment beneath the oaks, her ears loose but alert, her trunk lifting into the fog. Lily copied her, sniffing the cold air with childish seriousness. All she found was damp grass, old hay, and the faint metal scent of the gate. But Grace seemed to find something else hidden inside the morning. The pond beyond the south crossing was where Grace usually led her after sunrise. Lily loved that place more than almost anywhere in the preserve. The water was shallow near the edge, perfect for splashing, and the mud there was soft enough for her little feet. On normal mornings, she would have hurried ahead, eager and clumsy with joy. But this was not a normal morning. Grace walked slowly, placing each foot as if the ground itself needed to be tested. Lily stayed close, closer than usual, brushing her small shoulder against her mother's leg. She did not know why the air felt tight, only that Grace's silence had become heavy enough to follow. At the ranger station, Jake Turner was already awake. He had slept in his truck after checking the south gate twice during the night. The new chain was still locked, but beyond it, near the soft shoulder of the road, he saw something that made his stomach drop. Fresh tracks cutting through the dirt from a place no vehicle should have entered. Emily Carter arrived just as the fog began to brighten. She saw Jake standing still, staring toward the crossing, and she did not need him to explain everything. Somewhere in the mist, Grace and Lily were already moving. Emily grabbed her field bag from the truck, her voice low but urgent as she told Jake they had to find them now. Lily heard the engine before she saw anything. It was not Jake's truck, not the soft putter of a ranger vehicle. This sound was deeper, rougher, a growl tearing through the fog from the hidden road ahead. Grace stopped so suddenly that Lily bumped into her front leg, then stepped back, confused by the sharpness in her mother's body. For one heartbeat, everything held still. The fog trembled with the sound of something coming too fast. Grace turned her great head toward Lily, and in that instant, the calf saw no fear in her mother's eyes, only decision. Grace shoved Lily hard with her trunk, pushing the little elephant off the road and toward the wet grass. Lily stumbled and fell sideways into the brush. The world exploded behind her. Brakes screamed. Wood cracked. Metal groaned. A truck burst from the fog like a dark wall, its load of timber shifting as it swerved. Grace turned her body between the truck and her calf, taking the full force of the impact before Lily could even stand. The sound that followed did not feel like a sound. It felt like the whole morning breaking open. Dust and fog twisted together. Birds scattered out of the cedar trees. The truck lurched forward, its driver fighting the wheel, then kept moving for a few desperate yards before disappearing again into the white, leaving deep ruts and shattered branches behind. Lily rose on shaking legs. For a moment, she could not find Grace. Then she saw her mother lying near the edge of the road, one great side pressed into the dirt, her trunk stretched forward, as if still reaching for the calf she had saved. Lily made a small, broken noise, too soft at first for anyone but Grace to hear. Then the little elephant ran. She pressed her trunk against Grace's face, nudging once, then again, waiting for the familiar rumble that always answered her. But Grace did not rise. Her chest moved only slightly, each breath slow and painful. Lily stepped back, lifted her head, and cried out with a sound that carried across the fog like grief itself. Jake reached the scene first, skidding to a stop beside the broken fence line. Emily came right behind him, her medical bag in one hand, her face going pale when she saw Grace on the ground. She started forward, but Lily turned toward them at once. Her ears spread wide. Her small body moved in front of her mother. The calf was trembling, covered in wet grass and dust, but she did not move away. She placed herself between Grace and the humans, as if the whole world had become a threat. Jake froze, with both hands raised. Emily whispered Lily's name, soft and careful. But the baby elephant only stood taller, guarding the mother who had just saved her life. For a few seconds after Jake and Emily arrived, nobody moved. The fog still hung low over the road, wrapping Grace's fallen body in a pale gray hush. Lily stood in front of her mother, with her little legs spread wide, shaking so hard the dust trembled on her skin, yet refusing to give the humans even one step closer. Emily had treated frightened animals before, but this was different. Lily was not running from fear. She was standing inside it. Every part of her small body was telling the world the same thing. No one would touch Grace while she could still breathe, while she could still stand, while her young heart still believed she could save her mother alone. Jake lowered himself slowly, palms open, his voice barely louder than the wind moving through the cedar trees. He had known Lily since she first came to the preserve, had watched her chase birds, steal hay, and hide behind Grace whenever thunder rolled across the hills. But the calf staring back at him now was not playing. She was guarding. Emily took one careful step toward Grace. Lily reacted instantly. Her ears flared wide, her trunk rose, and a sharp cry tore from her chest. It was not the playful trumpet the keepers knew. It was raw and desperate, the sound of a baby who had just seen the strongest creature in her world fall to the ground. Grace's breathing was shallow. Emily could see it from where she stood. The uneven lift of the ribs, the weak movement near the shoulder, the streaks of blood darkening the dust beneath her side. Every instinct in Emily pushed her forward, but Lily blocked the path like a living gate, small enough to be vulnerable and brave enough to be dangerous. When Emily shifted left, Lily shifted with her. When Jake tried to circle wide through the grass, Lily spun and placed herself between him and Grace. She did not charge. She did not chase. She simply understood with terrifying clarity where danger might come from, and she moved her body to meet it before it could reach her mother. A deputy who had followed the emergency call raised his radio and stepped too close to the road. The crackle of static startled Lily. She grabbed a clump of wet dirt with her trunk and flung it toward the sound, splattering mud across the deputy's boots and making him stumble back. Jake snapped at him to stay behind the fence line. The crowd began to gather at a distance. Ranch hands, rescue workers, and 2 construction men from the next property stood along the road, their faces pale beneath their hats. Someone whispered that the driver had fled. Someone else said Grace might already be dying. Lily heard only voices, too many voices, and pressed herself harder against the invisible line she had drawn. Emily crouched and opened her medical bag slowly, letting Lily see every movement. She pulled out gauze, a stethoscope, a syringe case, then set them on the ground one by one. Her hope was simple. Show the calf that nothing in her hands was a weapon. But Lily only watched the objects with wide, wet eyes, trusting none of them. Then Grace made a sound. It was small, almost buried beneath the wind. But Lily heard it. The calf turned at once, touching her mother's cheek with the tip of her trunk. Grace's eyelid trembled, but she did not rise. Lily stayed there, breathing against her mother's face, as if her own breath could teach Grace how to keep breathing. For one soft moment, the scene seemed to loosen. Emily thought Lily might step aside. She moved forward half a step, slow and gentle, tears already burning in her eyes. But Lily caught the motion, swung back, and struck the dirt with her trunk so hard dust flew up between them like a warning curtain. Jake's jaw tightened. He knew what Emily knew. Every minute mattered. Grace needed pain relief, fluids, and a real examination before shock carried her too far away. But Lily did not understand minutes or medicine. She understood the truck, the noise, her mother falling, and now the humans coming with metal in their hands. The sun climbed higher, thinning the fog and exposing the full damage of the morning. Broken fence rails lay across the road. Tire tracks cut through the mud where the truck had vanished. Grace's body looked impossibly still beneath the brightening sky, and beside her stood Lily, no longer hidden beneath her mother's shadow, but casting one of her own. Emily stepped back at last, not in defeat, but in respect. She looked at Jake and whispered that they would have to earn Lily's permission before they could save Grace. The little elephant lowered her trunk onto her mother's head again, trembling with exhaustion, but still facing the humans. She was only a baby, yet she had become the wall. By late morning, the fog had burned away, leaving the road bare beneath a hard Texas sun. Lily still stood in the dust before Grace, her ears drooping now from heat and fear. But her body never left its place. Every time someone shifted beyond the fence, her trunk lifted, and the little calf became a warning again. Emily watched Grace's chest rise, then fall, then pause too long before rising again. The pattern frightened her more than the blood, more than the broken fence, more than Lily's desperate defense. Grace was slipping towards shock. The longer they waited, the smaller the space between rescue and goodbye became. Sheriff Cole Harris arrived with 2 animal control officers and a portable restraint kit in the back of his truck. He stepped out slowly, scanning the crowd, the damaged road, and the calf blocking the injured elephant. To him, Lily did not look like a grieving child. She looked like a dangerous animal standing between professionals and an emergency. Jake met him before he reached the fence line. His voice stayed low, but the anger in it was clear. He told Cole that Lily was terrified, not aggressive. She had just watched a truck hit her mother and run. If they rushed her, forced her, or fired anything at her, she might bolt straight into the road or collapse from panic. Cole listened, but his eyes remained on Grace. "That elephant needs treatment," he said, "and that calf is stopping it." Emily stepped forward, her face pale beneath the dust. She agreed Grace needed help, but not like that. A frightened baby elephant was not a locked gate. She was a living heart trying to understand a world that had just shattered. Lily heard the sharper tone in the humans' voices. She did not know what they were saying, but she knew tension when it entered the air. Her little body swayed, exhausted, and for one brief second, her knees softened. Then Grace made a faint, broken breath behind her, and Lily straightened again as if that sound had pulled her back to life. An animal control officer opened a long black case near the truck. The click of the latches carried across the clearing. Lily's head snapped toward it. Her ears spread wide, and a low cry pushed from her chest. She stepped backward until her hind leg brushed Grace, then planted herself again, trembling between her mother and the strange object. Emily's stomach tightened. She knew what was inside that case. A tranquilizer might calm Lily if everything went perfectly. But nothing about the morning was perfect. The wrong dose, the wrong angle, one sudden movement, and the calf could be hurt. Worse, she could go down too far from Grace, believing she had failed her mother. Jake stood in front of the case and blocked the officer's path. Cole's patience began to crack. The crowd had grown larger, phones were out, and the story was already moving faster than any of them could control. A baby elephant guarding her dying mother was no longer just a rescue call. It was becoming something people would remember. Near the ranger station truck, a young girl named Maddie slipped from beside her father and stopped behind the caution tape. She had been watching Lily for a long time. Not the ears, not the raised trunk, not the mud thrown at boots. She watched the calf's eyes, the way they kept jumping back to Grace, wide and wet and lost. Maddie whispered, "She's not mad, she's scared." The words were small, but Emily heard them. She turned and saw the child standing still, hands at her sides, not reaching, not demanding, simply breathing quietly in Lily's direction. For the first time since the accident, Lily looked at a human without warning them away. The moment lasted only seconds, but it changed something in Emily. Lily did not need to be beaten by fear or forced into obedience. She needed proof. Proof that the humans would not take Grace. Proof that the hands coming closer were not like the truck. Proof that stepping aside would not mean abandoning the only soul she trusted. Cole gave them 10 minutes before he made the call. 10 minutes to move a baby elephant's grief without breaking it. Emily lowered herself to the ground and pushed her medical bag away, leaving her hands empty. Jake sent everyone back another 20 feet. Maddie stayed silent near her father, her eyes fixed on Lily like a prayer. Then Grace stopped moving. It was only for a few seconds, but the whole clearing felt it. Her chest stilled. Emily's face went white. Jake held his breath. Lily turned so fast, her feet slipped in the dust, pressing her trunk against Grace's mouth, nudging and crying softly, begging for the breath to come back. At last, Grace's ribs lifted again, weak and uneven. Lily froze with her trunk still resting against her mother's face. The calf did not understand how close death had come, but she understood the silence before that breath. When she turned back toward the humans, her fear was still there. But now something else burned beneath it. Time was running out. The sun climbed over the Texas preserve until the road shimmered and the broken fence cast thin shadows across the dust. Lily had been standing for hours, but she still kept her small body between Grace and the humans. Her ears hung lower now, heavy with heat, yet every time someone moved, they lifted again, like tired wings. Grace lay behind her, breathing in uneven waves. Sometimes the sound was deep enough for Lily to feel through the ground. Sometimes it grew so faint the calf would turn in panic, touch her mother's mouth, and wait. When the breath returned, Lily would stand straighter, as if her own little body had pulled Grace back again. Emily sat several yards away with her hands visible and her medical bag closed beside her. She no longer tried to move forward. Instead, she watched Lily the way a person might watch a locked door with someone precious trapped behind it. She knew the key was not force. The key was trust, and trust was the one thing Lily had left to give. Jake pushed the crowd farther back beyond the service road. Ranchers, deputies, construction workers, and neighbors had gathered in small, silent groups. Some held phones, recording the calf who would not leave her mother. Within minutes, the video began spreading online, carrying Lily's grief far beyond the hills she had always known. Cole saw the phones too, and the pressure tightened his face. He wanted the scene controlled before it became a public disaster. But every time he looked at Lily, even he paused. The calf was not acting wild for the sake of it. She was trembling, thirsty, frightened, and still choosing to stand guard over a mother twice the size of any human there. By early afternoon, Lily's strength began to break in small ways. Her trunk dragged against the dirt between warnings. Her knees bent once, then caught. Dust clung to the wet lines beneath her eyes. Maddie watched from behind her father's truck, holding a bottle of water she had not opened, afraid even the crack of plastic might scare the calf. Emily asked for a bucket of clean water, not close enough to trick Lily, not close enough to threaten her. Just near the edge of the space Lily had claimed, Jake carried it slowly, set it down, and backed away with both hands raised. Lily stared at the bucket for a long time, her dry trunk lifting, then dropping again beside Grace. The calf wanted the water. Everyone could see it. Her body leaned toward it, but her feet stayed planted near her mother's head. Finally, she stretched her trunk as far as it would reach, touched the rim, and drew back as if the bucket itself might betray her. Emily's heart sank at the sight. Lily was too afraid to accept even kindness. Then Maddie whispered something from behind the tape. It was not a command, not even Lily's name, just a soft sound the way someone might comfort a sleeping child. Lily turned her head slightly. The bucket sat between fear and relief. After a long moment, she dipped her trunk, took a little water, and carried it not to herself, but to Grace's mouth. No one spoke. Even Cole lowered his radio. Lily tried again, clumsy and desperate, wetting the dust around Grace's lips, then touching her mother's cheek as if asking her to drink. Grace did not open her eyes, but her trunk shifted a fraction against the ground. To Lily, that tiny movement was enough to keep hope alive. Emily saw the opening and asked Jake for the sanctuary recordings. They had used them before for anxious elephants. Deep rumbles, distant calls, the slow music of a calm herd. When the speaker played softly from the ranger truck, Lily's ears moved at once. The sound entered the clearing like memory, something older than fear. For several breaths, Lily changed. Her shoulders loosened, her trunk lowered. She listened to the voices of elephants she could not see, voices that seemed to say the world was not only engines and pain. Emily moved 1 inch forward, then stopped. Lily noticed, but she did not throw dust. She only watched, uncertain, torn between guarding and believing. The peace did not last. A news van rolled up near the county road, and its sudden brakes hissed through the heat. Lily startled hard, swinging around with a sharp cry, and the fragile trust shattered. Grace's breath caught behind her. Emily froze, knowing the setback had cost them more than time. It had cost Lily the little safety she had begun to feel. By sunset, The crowd was gone, except for those who had to stay. The road cooled, but Grace did not improve. Emily checked the distance with desperate eyes and whispered to Jake that if Grace went untreated through the night, they might lose her before morning. Lily stood in the fading light, swaying with exhaustion, still refusing to let death come any closer. Night settled over the preserve like a heavy blue blanket, quieting the road, the fields, and the frightened people who had watched the day unfold. The heat finally loosened its grip, but Lily did not rest. She stood beside Grace beneath the rescue lights, her small body outlined in gold, still guarding the mother who had not yet opened her eyes. The crowd was gone now. Only Jake, Emily, Cole, Maddie, and a few exhausted rescue workers remained beyond the safety tape. Their voices had fallen to whispers. Even Cole no longer gave orders the same way. Something about Lily's vigil had changed the air around them, turning an emergency scene into something almost sacred. Lily swayed where she stood. Her ears hung low, and her trunk dragged through the dust until it left a thin, trembling line beside Grace's face. Every few minutes, the calf leaned down and touched her mother's cheek. Sometimes she pressed near Grace's mouth, waiting for warm breath. Sometimes she nudged the still trunk lying in the dirt. Emily watched from the edge of the lights, feeling helpless in a way no training had prepared her for. Medicine sat beside her, clean and ready, but love stood in the way, wounded and afraid. She had spent years learning how to save animals, yet that night she understood that saving Grace meant first saving Lily from the fear that held her there. Near midnight, the wind moved through the cedar trees and carried the faint sound of the herd recordings again. Soft elephant rumbles floated across the road, low and gentle, like distant family calling through the dark. Lily lifted her head. For the first time in hours, her eyes did not look only at the humans. They searched the darkness beyond them. The sounds soothed her, but they could not erase what she had seen. The truck, the impact, Grace falling, the humans rushing in with metal cases and strange voices. Lily's young mind had tied all of it together into one terrible truth. The world had hurt her mother, and the world might try again if she looked away. Maddie sat quietly beside her father's truck, wrapped in a jacket too big for her shoulders. She did not speak to Lily now. She only watched the calf fight sleep with a courage too large for such a small body. Once, when Lily nearly folded to her knees, Maddie covered her mouth to keep from crying out. Grace's breathing changed just before dawn. It was so slight that no one noticed at first except Lily. The calf froze, her trunk hovering above her mother's face. Grace's chest lifted deeper than before, then fell with a soft shudder. Lily gave a tiny cry and pressed closer, as if afraid hope itself might vanish if she moved too fast. Emily stood slowly. Jake reached out to stop her, but she shook her head. She had seen the shift too. Grace's eyelid fluttered. Her great trunk moved barely an inch through the dust, weak but searching. Lily lowered her head, and Grace touched the calf's leg with the faintest brush. A mother's answer from the edge of darkness. The touch broke something open in Lily. All day, she had been stone, wall, warning, shield. Now she became a baby again. She bent over Grace, tracing her mother's face with frantic tenderness, making soft sounds that trembled more than they rang. She was not commanding Grace to rise anymore. She was begging her not to leave. Then Grace did something no one expected. With painful effort, she shifted her gaze past Lily and toward Emily. The veterinarian stood perfectly still, hands empty, eyes wet, body lowered, so she seemed smaller and less frightening. Grace did not trumpet. She did not resist. She only breathed, watched, and let the moment stretch between them. Lily followed her mother's gaze. She looked at Emily, then back at Grace, confused by the silence. Her whole life, Grace had taught her what was safe and what was not. A rumble meant come closer. A shove meant danger. A calm body meant trust. And now, even in pain, Grace was not telling her to fight. Emily took one slow step forward. Lily's ears lifted, but she did not throw dust. Another step came, then a pause, long enough for the calf to choose. Lily trembled so hard, her trunk curled inward. She pressed it once against Grace's cheek, as if asking permission. Grace answered with a weak touch against Lily's foot. The little elephant stepped back. It was not far, not even enough for Emily to reach Grace fully. But everyone saw it. Jake lowered his head. Maddie began to cry, without making a sound. After 6 hours of fear and one endless night of devotion, Lily had not stopped protecting her mother. She had simply learned that help could stand beside love. Emily moved closer, like she was entering a church, one slow step at a time, her hands open and her voice barely above a whisper. Lily stood only a few feet away, trembling beside Grace's head, watching every motion. She had stepped back, but not surrendered. Her mother was still her whole world, and Lily was not ready to trust anyone with it. Jake came behind Emily with the medical bag, moving so carefully the gravel hardly shifted beneath his boots. Cole and the deputies stayed back without being asked. Even the rescue lights seemed softer now. Lily's ears lifted at the sound of metal clasps, but when Grace touched her foot again, the calf held still, fighting the fear that told her to block them. Emily knelt beside Grace and placed the stethoscope against the wounded elephant's side. For a moment, there was only wind, insects, and the thin sound of everyone holding their breath. Then Emily heard it. A heartbeat, weak but steady enough to chase the terror from her face. She looked at Jake and nodded once. Grace was still alive. The first injection made Grace flinch. Lily lunged half a step forward with a sharp cry, and every person froze. Emily did not pull away. She lowered her head, whispered gently, and waited. Lily pressed her trunk against Grace's cheek, feeling the painful breath, the fragile warmth. Then slowly, she stayed where she was, as if deciding pain could also be part of saving. For the next hour, the rescue became a quiet dance around Lily's trust. Emily cleaned the wound, gave fluids, and checked for internal trauma. Jake passed supplies without sudden movements. Lily circled only once, then returned to Grace's face, touching her mother after every sound, every bandage, every tremor, as if reminding her she was not allowed to leave. When the transport trailer arrived, Lily's fear came rushing back. The long white vehicle hissed as it stopped near the road, its ramp lowering with a heavy groan that echoed through the morning. Lily backed against Grace, ears wide, eyes shining. She had trusted hands and medicine, but this machine looked too much like the thing that had shattered their world. Emily understood before anyone spoke. She asked the driver to cut the engine and ordered every unnecessary person away. Maddie stood far behind the tape, both hands over her heart, watching the little elephant face another impossible choice. Grace needed the trailer. Lily hated it. And once again, love was standing between fear and survival. Jake brought a bucket of water and placed it near the ramp, then walked away. Emily touched the side of the trailer and spoke softly, not to command Lily, but to show her there was no anger in the metal. Lily stretched her trunk toward the ramp, tapped it once, and jerked back. Then Grace breathed out, low and rough, and Lily looked at her mother. It took time, patience, and a silence no one dared break. Grace was guided onto the padded platform, inch by inch. Lily walked beside her, never letting her trunk lose contact with her mother's skin. When the team tried to close the side gate, Lily cried out so sharply that Emily stopped them. The calf would not be separated. Not now. Not after everything. So they changed the plan. A second compartment was opened beside Grace, just wide enough for Lily to stand near her mother's head during the first part of the ride. It was not easy, and it was not how the rescue manual would have written it. But when Lily stepped inside and rested her trunk through the opening toward Grace, everyone knew it was the only way. The journey to the Colorado Wildlife Rescue Center began slowly, with Jake riding behind the trailer and Emily sitting close enough to hear every shift inside. Lily did not sleep. She stood through every turn, every stop, every mile, her small trunk reaching toward Grace whenever the road grew rough. The mother had saved the calf once. Now the calf was holding her there. Weeks passed before Grace could walk without help. Lily stayed beside her through the long recovery, guarding less fiercely, but loving just as deeply. She learned to splash again in the shallow pool, to chase birds through the grass, to accept apples from Emily's hand. But each evening, when the sky turned gold, she returned to Grace and slept against her side. Then one night, Emily reviewed the old security footage from the crossing. The cameras was grainy, the fog thick, but the truth was clear. Grace had seen the truck first. She had shoved Lily away, then turned her own body into the impact, taking the strike that would have crushed her calf. Emily watched in silence, tears falling before she could stop them. Lily never knew the full meaning of that video. She only knew that her mother had fallen and that she had stood beside her until help became safe. But everyone else understood. Grace had given her body to keep Lily alive, and Lily, too young to understand death, had given everything she had to keep Grace from slipping away. She was just a baby elephant, but she would not let her mama die. If Lily's story touched your heart, leave a simple 1 in the comments for this brave little elephant. And if you believe Grace and Lily both saved each other that day, comment 0 for the love between a mother and her baby. Stories like this remind us that love, courage, and family are not just human feelings. They live in every heartbeat of the natural world. Subscribe to the channel and stay with us for the next emotional animal story. Because sometimes the smallest creatures carry the biggest miracles.